My name's Chris Gosling and this is Felixstowe News TV. One thing I'd like to do this year in 2015 is to do a bit more in depth about the people who died in the First World War. The British soldiers, the British seamen, Marines, Royal Marines, all kinds of guys who fought and who came from Felixstowe. So what I thought we'd do is get the list of names and we'll get some Felixstowe people to read them out, because these men died between 1914 and 1918. They're people's great-granddads, maybe some people's granddads, but mostly people's great-granddads and even further back than that. So it's 100 years ago, don't forget. Time has flashed past. It's easy to forget these guys. We can remember them as a group, but let's try and remember them as the individual men they were, mostly young, some of them a bit older. The oldest guy I came across was about 50, but most of them are guys between, 18 and 25. Let's try and remember them. They should have had longer lives, but they died in defence of their country.
Harry Aldis, Edward H. Alexander, Robert Peter Backhouse, Charles Baker, Clifton Harold Baldry.
Ernest Robert Barber, Henry James Barber, John William Barham, James Barrell, Alfred Richard Barton.
Hugh Fabian Barton, Harry James Baxter, Albert Victor Beale, George Frederick Bear, Joseph Albert Bear, Charles Belgrove, John Hillier Blunt,
Charles Wesley Bond, Arthur Edward Walter, Albert George Branch, George Benjamin Branch, Albert George Brand.
George William Brown, Richard James Bullock, Albert John Burgess, Thomas Burrows, Felix Mortimer Butterworth, Reginald Willoughby Butterworth.
Stanley Woodall Butterworth, Horace Lemon Churchman Caddy, Harry B. Capon, William James Carpenter, Frank Chandler.
Cecil Hinsby Clark, Sidney P. Clark, William Cole, George Collins, Albert James Copping, and William John Stanley Cotton.
Sidney Crabb, William Croxon, Alfred Ezekiel Cullum, Frederick Albert Dawson.
Harold Aubrey Dickens, Arthur Francis Donovan, Frederick James Dow, Edward William Durrant, Fred George Durrant.
Harry Stanley Durrant, Walter Samuel Durrant, Gordon Carr Ellis, Arthur John Farthing, Robert Fenn.
Alan Fulsher, Stanley Lewis Garnham, George W. Gildersleeves.
Robert Arthur Gleadle, Charles Henry Godfrey, Frederick Felix James Goldstein, Arthur Edward Goodchild, George Gorham.
Edward Henry Gorham, Albert Henry Gort, Ernest Grayling, John Percy Grayling, Fred Ambrose Grayston.
Henry Grimwood, William Frederick Hall, Stanley Hawes, G. Hurd.
Charles William Hill, Arthur Alexander Hodsall, Walter Daniel Horn, William Charles Hunt, Cedric Arthur Jackson.
Francis Henry Jennings, Francis William Jennings, Hugh Cotter Jennings, Harry Clarence Jennings, Robert G. Jennings.
Samuel Edward Johnson, Frederick Owen Jones, Alexander Hugh Sinclair Joyce, Harry Juniper.
William John Kemp, Charles Harold Kent, J. Kent, William Henry Middleton Kersey, Robert James Kidd.
Stanley King, Walter Knights, Alfred George Lancaster, Peter Clement Layard, and a Frederick Leggett.
Stanley James Lindsell, Horace W. Lyle, John Henry Munsell, Robert Markham,
Stanley Charles Markham, Kenneth Ralph Mason, Wilfred Howard Mason, Arthur John Mays, Harry Stanley Mays, William Isaac Mays, and Harry George Menton.
Robert James Mills, Sidney Minns, William Harold Minter, Arthur William Moves, Leslie Oswald Owen.
It's been an interesting exercise in Felixstowe Town Centre trying to get the list of the fallen in the First World War read out. I've got a list of around 200 names, and I guess something like 130, 140 of those names have been read out kindly by people who've read out 4 or 5 names at a time. But most of the people that I've asked, or many of the people that I've asked, especially the older people, have actually turned me down. I think that's quite sad. In fact, I think it's very sad. And I hope that the younger generation, who seem to have been keener to help me read out those names, will continue to do so. And I'll come back in a few days' time to try and get those names read out, just by ordinary Felixstowe people who maybe, like most of us, owe a debt of gratitude to the men who died in the First and Second Wars. I'm quite saddened, really, by my experience today. It's one of those things that happens. Maybe I haven't explained it right, maybe I haven't done it right. But we have got a lot of kind people who've helped by reading out 5 names, and sooner or later we'll come back and do some more.